On the morning of May 14th, 1969, the jungle in the Shau Valley woke up angry. Low clouds hugged the ridgelines like dirty wool, the air already hot, thick with the smell of wet earth and rotting vegetation. Mist clung to the bomb craters and shattered trees, softening the scars of past battles that would never really heal. Somewhere in that green labyrinth, Specialist 4th Class Danny Cortez adjusted the straps on his web gear and checked, for the 4th time, the one detail that separated him from every other rifleman in his platoon: his magazines, all seated backwards in their pouches. He stood just off the muddy trail, boots sunk ankle-deep, M16A1 held across his chest. The rest of 2nd Platoon, Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry, shuffled and muttered quietly as they waited for word to move out. Sweat ran down their necks, disappearing into faded jungle fatigues dark with old stains. Leeches clung to socks. Mosquitoes whined in ears. Somewhere off to the west, a distant thump of artillery rolled lazily over the valley, too far away to feel like comfort. Cortez's squad leader, Sergeant Tom Hennessy, watched him tug each magazine one last time, making sure the curve of the aluminum bodies faced away from his chest. He shook his head, unable to stop himself. "Christ, Cortez," Hennessy muttered. "Every damn time. You ever gonna fix that mess?" "It's not a mess, Sarge," Cortez said, eyes still on his pouches. "It's faster this way." Hennessy snorted. "Faster is doing it the way everybody does. In, up, slap, done. You're the only guy in the battalion stubborn enough to run 'em backwards." Cortez slid one mag halfway out, showing how his thumb and index finger hooked it so it came out already aligned with the magwell. To anyone else, it looked like showing off. To him, it was a quarter-second shaved off in a world where quarter-seconds got tallied in blood. "Doesn't matter what they taught," he said quietly. "Matters what works when it's loud." Hennessy spat into the mud. "Yeah? When that fancy reload gets you killed, don't make me write the letter home." Up the line, Lieutenant Mark Phillips, Blackjack 26, on the net, closed his map case and gave the signal. The platoon flowed off the small LZ and into the trees, swallowed almost immediately by bamboo and hanging vines. The filtered light vanished behind them. Sound changed too. The open air of the clearing became a damp, pressing hush, broken by insects and the occasional creak of gear. The mission sounded simple when Phillips briefed it. Patrol up a draw, check 2 marked hamlets, establish an overwatch position near a ridgeline saddle that brigade intel believed hid an NVA logistics route. If they found anything, they called it in. If they got hit, they fell back to a phase line and let artillery talk. Everyone understood that the valley often had other ideas. They moved in single file, then staggered file, adjusting to the terrain. The point man picked his way along faint animal tracks and bomb crater rims. The jungle smelled of rot and rain, dense enough that each breath felt like drinking. Cortez walked in Hennessy's squad near the middle, rifle in a relaxed, ready carry, left hand brushing the magwell, right hand never far from the first reversed pouch. In the months since arriving in country, he'd turned reloading into a private ritual. Back at LZ Arsenal, after stand down, he'd sit in the hooch with an empty rifle and a stack of mags, stripping and inserting them until his fingers ached. The others had pelted him with C-ration tins and jokes. "You in a John Wayne movie, Danny. You think Charlie's gonna care how pretty that mag change looks?" He ignored them. Perfect repetition calmed him more than cigarettes ever could. The trail climbed, then dipped, turning from mud to slick clay. They splashed across a shallow stream, boots sucking at the bottom. The air cooled slightly with altitude, but never lost its wet weight. A distant artillery rumble rolled over the ridges, too far away to matter. By late morning, they reached the grid where the first hamlet should have been. What they found was a smear of blackened posts, collapsed thatch, and rusting pots. Whatever had lived here was gone, months or years gone. No people, no dogs, no smoke, just absence. "Place gives me the creeps," one of the new guys muttered, "like they just wiped it off the map." "Keep your game face on," Hennessy answered. NVA didn't evaporate. They found a handful of corroded AK casings in the dirt, logged the grid, and pushed on. The second hamlet was their real concern, higher up near the saddle, a natural choke point, perfect for hidden caches and ambushes. By early afternoon, the sky sagged with low, heavy clouds. Rain came hard and fast, turning the world into grey curtains. Ponchos snapped open, water ran down necks and into boots. Visibility shrank to a few meters. Radios hissed, signals bouncing poorly in the soupy air. Second platoon kept moving by compass and memory, trust and habit. In the Shau, you were almost never sure of your exact position, only sure that someone else, somewhere, knew exactly where you were. When the rain finally eased to a mist, they were close. The second hamlet lay beyond a small rise. Phillips halted the platoon and had Hennessy's squad sweep forward. Cortez slid in behind a low termite mound and peered through the dripping grass. He saw thatch roofs ahead, intact, clean, unburned. No people, no animals, no laundry, no smoke. "Roofs look fresh," he murmured as Hennessy crawled up beside him. "No scorch, no holes." "And no life," Hennessy replied, "like a set somebody forgot to take down." Behind them, the platoon sergeant moved past, caught sight of Cortez's gear, and flipped a pouch open. "Damn it, Cortez," he growled. "Still doing that backwards crap? Ever think there's a reason we have a standard?" "Yes, Sergeant," Cortez said, rain trickling off his helmet. "And I've thought about how fast I run out of time if I fumble a mag when it starts." "Cowboy," the sergeant muttered. "Don't make me write the letter." He snapped the flap shut and moved on, leaving Cortez with his fingers resting once more on that first reversed magazine and a knot low in his gut. The air around the silent hamlet felt thick, waiting. In the distance, thunder rolled, or artillery. In Vietnam, the two sounded alike. The valley seemed to inhale as second platoon rose from the wet ground and began to move toward the untouched, too-quiet village, unaware that by sunset, those backwards magazines would be all that stood between them and a closing ring of gunfire. They approached the hamlet in a disciplined stagger line, each man a few meters apart, rifles up. The huts sat in a shallow bowl, ringed by tree line and brush that climbed the slopes. From a distance, it could have been peaceful. Up close, the stillness felt manufactured. First squad flowed between the outer shacks, kicking doors, clearing corners, shouting short-clipped calls. Clear, empty, no civilians, no animals, just abandoned implements, a pot over cold ashes, a mat rolled tight. "Blackjack 2-6, this is 1-4, the radio murmured. "We're in the objective, no movement." Phillips's reply was calm. "Roger, proceed with caution. 2-4, set a perimeter north and east. 3-4, watch the rear." Hennessy nudged Cortez and pointed toward the northeastern edge, where the slope ran up toward the saddle. "We're over there. That tree line's where I'd sit if I was waiting to hit us." They moved into the tall grass, spreading into a loose arc. Cortez dug himself a shallow scrape behind a low rise, giving him a view of the huts and the dark wall of foliage beyond. Smoky Dawson settled to his right, another rifleman to his left. Hennessy dropped a few meters behind them, the squad's small anchor. 2-4 in position, Hennessy reported. Nothing moved for long seconds, only the small sounds, men shifting, gear creaking, a distant dripping of water from leaves. Then Cortez heard it, 3 sharp bird calls in a row, too deliberate, too clean. He opened his mouth to say something. Down in the hamlet, a door swung open on a hut near the center. The instant the boot hit the threshold, a buried charge detonated. The blast blew the door outward and filled the doorway with grey-black smoke and splinters. For a heartbeat, there was stunned stillness. Chickens exploded from hiding places, scattering in panic. Then the valley's teeth closed. AKs erupted from the tree line above and from concealed positions in gullies and spider holes. Their deeper bark cut through the air, mingling with the roaring chatter of PK machine guns. Red tracers reached out in straight, hateful lines. RPGs hissed into flight. exhaust trails briefly hanging as warheads slammed into hut walls and the muddy slope. "Contact front! Contact front!" Hennessy bellowed. Cortez hugged the earth, then rose just enough to bring his rifle to bear. Through the front sight, gaps in the foliage resolved into the faint outline of helmets, slivers of shoulders, flashes of muzzle fire. He fired 3-round bursts, not waiting for perfect visibility. Brass clinked against rock and dirt. Around him, his squad poured rounds into the green wall. The jungle answered, bullets snapping overhead, chewing into termite mounds, shredding leaves into a green mist. Somewhere to his left, a man screamed, his cry cut short by another burst. 2-6, this is 2-4, Hennessy yelled into his handset. Heavy contact from northeast tree line, at least a platoon. We're pinned. Roger, Phillips answered, voice tight. 1-4 is in contact in the village. Hold and break what you can. I'm calling Redleg. Try to mark targets. Hold, in this case, meant stay alive and keep shooting. An RPG slammed into the slope near the old point position, showering dirt and metal fragments downslope. The concussion punched the air from Cortez's lungs. His vision blurred for a moment. When it cleared, he saw more muzzle flashes in the notch of trees he'd been watching. He pressed the trigger. Nothing. Soft, empty click. Bolt locked back. Empty. For most men, this was the dangerous second. Thumb to mag release, fingers to flap, drag, orient, insert, that tiny window when panic could derail simple muscle memory. For Cortez, the process had no edges. Mag release, let the empty fall. Right hand already under the pouch flap. Because his mags were reversed, the curve dropped straight into his palm in the exact orientation he needed. One pull, one arc, one slam into the mag well. Tap, tug, hit the bolt catch. Sight, back on the notch. His rifle roared again in what felt like a single heartbeat. To his right, Smoky Dawson cursed, trying to yank a mag clear that had snagged on the pouch edge. On the left, Private Ortega tried to stuff his empty magazine into a pouch before reaching for a fresh one. An AK burst walked across Ortega's position mid-fumble and cut him down. "Ortega's hit!" someone shouted. "Keep firing!" Hennessy barked back. "You help him by killing them." The NVA pressed harder, sliding down the slope in short rushes, using trees and hummocks for cover. Whistles and shouted Vietnamese commands cut through the din, controlling the pace. Cortez tracked a helmet that bobbed into view, fired, saw it vanish. His rifle cycled, spat brass, ran dry again. Another reversed mag appeared in his hand, driven by habit. Somewhere in the chaos, word came over the net. Enemy contact to the rear as well. Third squad was screaming about movement in the trees behind them. "They're all around us," someone cried. "They're behind us." The ring was closing. An RPG slammed into the slope just below Cortez's position, the warhead punching into the clay before detonating. The blast shredded the ground, flinging mud, rock, and burning fragments upward. To his right, Smokey didn't move afterward. Shrapnel had found him where his flak jacket rode up, punching through soft tissue. Blood pooled dark and fast. "Smokey!" Cortez shouted, reaching out. No response. "You can't help him," Hennessy yelled. "Stay on your gun. They're going to push that gap." More figures emerged from the shredded tree line, sprinting in short bounds. Cortez cut one down, then another. His rifle locked open again. Drop, grab, slam. Somewhere down the line, another soldier fumbled and dropped his mag in the mud, scrambling after it, only to take a round clean through the skull. The NVA appeared to be everywhere, front, flanks, rear. The platoon's perimeter was disintegrating into isolated pockets of resistance. "We're in danger of being overrun," Hennessy shouted into his handset. "Where the hell is that artillery?" "Redleg is deconflicting friendlies," Phillips replied. "Danger close, hold." Holding with dwindling ammo, mounting dead, and an enemy who knew the ground better than any map. Another burst of fire raked their section. The small notch in the tree line, branches cut just enough for a clear lane, brightened with muzzle flashes again. It was a perfect assault channel. "Cortez, that notch is yours!" Hennessy yelled. Anything moves in there, you kill it!" "Roger!" Cortez shouted back. He poured rounds into the gap. His hands moved through reloads like a metronome. Drop, draw, slam, tap, tug, fire. Each mag flowed from pouch to rifle without that extra heartbeat of orientation. Each reload gave him one more chance to cut down a man stepping into that lane. Then an RPG streaked out of that very notch, smoking toward their line. The rocket's smoke trail seemed to slow the world. Cortez's rifle was already up. Training said, "Shoot the man, not the projectile." But the grenadier had already fired. Still, he snapped a burst at the source, saw the gunner jerk backward, pinned to the brush. No second rocket. The first was enough. It hit just below their positions. The explosion tore a crater in the slope, flinging dirt and shards. The shockwave punched through Cortez's chest, made his ears ring, turned the world grey. When his vision sharpened, Smokey was definitely gone, twisted at an angle that meant no medic could help. Ellis, farther down the line, screamed that he'd dropped his mag. In his rush to fix it, he jammed another in backwards. When he realized and tried to flip it, a burst found him and turned his panic into silence. Cortez barely had time to register any of it. The tree line spat muzzle flashes. Men were living and dying in the space of magazine changes. "Cortez!" Hennessy shouted over the chaos. "How many you got left?" He ran his hand across his pouches, feeling weight rather than counting. "3 full, some partials." "Good. You're about to be resupply. Ellis and Smokey won't need theirs. Crawl and grab what you can. We're running dry." Cortez swallowed, throat sand dry despite the humidity. Moving meant standing up into the teeth of the ambush. Staying meant starving the line of bullets. He popped his last guaranteed full mag into the rifle, then dropped into the dirt and crawled downslope, staying in the shallow dead ground. Rounds cracked overhead, showering him with bits of clay. One tore through his sleeve without touching skin. Another punched a hole in his canteen and drenched his side in lukewarm water. He reached Ellis first. The man's helmet was gone, his eyes glazed. His gear, though, still held mags. Cortez stripped the pouches ruthlessly, scooping up whatever he could, not bothering to check how full each was. Then Smokey. A fly already crawled across his cheek. Cortez worked his dead friend's pouches with quick hands, swallowing down the grief. Smokey's mags were all correct, bullets facing inward. In some other life, that might have been ironic. Right now, they were just weight. He stuffed every magazine, full, partial, who knew, into his own pouches, mixing them with the reversed ones. Then he crawled back upslope, the world a tunnel of mud, roots, and the constant crack of small arms. He slid back into his scrape and dumped the extra mags toward Hennessy and the 2 remaining shooters beside him. "That's what I could get," he shouted. "Some are partial." "I don't care," Hennessy snapped, grabbing 2. "You just saved our asses." The sergeant's look held something new now. Not mockery, not irritation. Respect. Artillery finally spoke. The first shell landed beyond the ridgeline, a crushing detonation that made the RPGs seem like firecrackers. The tree line disappeared into a blossom of dirt, smoke, and shattered wood. The ground heaved. "Splash," Redleg reported, absurdly calm. "Fire for effect. Same grid," Phillips yelled. Shell after shell walked the ridge, tearing up trees and spider holes. NVA fire faltered, then shifted, then tried to get low enough to ride out the barrage. Screams carried even through the concussions. It didn't fix the rear and flanks, where the guns couldn't reach. Third squad was mauled. Their M60 finally went silent. Without the pig's deeper rhythm, AKs surged closer through the trees. 3-4 is combat ineffective, someone on the net gasped. "We're down to a handful." "Then we shrink," Hennessy growled. "We can't hold this whole ring. We'll die in pieces." He pointed downslope, toward a small knoll with shattered trees, a better central position. "Phillips wants us there," he said. "One tight perimeter. We bound back in teams. Last pair covers. Congratulations. You and me are last." Last. Rear guard. The squad peeled back in bounds. 2 men up, the rest laying down cover. Then those 2 covered the next pair. Under training conditions, it was almost elegant. Under an ambush, with mortars beginning to drop and branches exploding, it was more like a stumbling fight with gravity. Cortez burned mags as fast as he dared without wasting rounds. Drop, draw, slam, fire. His hands moved on rails. When Hennessy finally shouted, "Last two, you and me," he realized his gear felt light. Maybe 2 decent mags left. Maybe. "On 3, Hennessy said. "We go together." "You go," Cortez answered before he could stop himself. "I've still got more." Hennessy stared at him for a split second, then nodded once. "Fine. Don't die." The sergeant sprinted downslope, weaving through the dirt spurts as NVA guns tracked him. A round clipped his helmet, knocking it off his head, but he made it to the knoll and dove into cover. Up on the failing line, Cortez was alone. He emptied another magazine into the tree line, making every shot count, harassing any movement that looked like a squad massing for a rush. When the bolt locked back again, he yanked what felt like a partial, slammed it in, and kept firing. "Move your ass," Hennessy screamed from below. "That's an order." The next time his rifle ran dry, he knew it was now or never. He slammed his last good mag into the well, got one more burst off to keep heads down, then exploded from cover, legs pumping. The world became nothing but near misses. Rounds snapped by his ears, plucked at his uniform, hammered the slope behind him. Halfway down, his boots snagged a hidden root. He went airborne, rifle flying out of his hands, body slamming into the clay. He hit hard enough to see stars. His rifle skidded away, just out of easy reach. Rounds chewed the ground around him, homing in on the thrashing shape. He didn't scramble blindly. Instinct, built over all those quiet nights at LZ Arsenal, took over. His right hand punched into his nearest pouch, found the reversed curve of a magazine automatically. His left reached out, hooked the sling of the fallen rifle, dragged it close. Gun and mag met in front of his chest. He shoved the mag home in one smooth arc, hit the bolt catch, and fired from his back, sending a burst into the tree line to discourage whoever was sighting in. The momentary pause he bought was just enough to roll onto his stomach and scramble the last few meters to the knoll. He dove behind a splintered trunk, chest heaving. "You insane bastard," Hennessy panted. "You should be dead." "Maybe later," Cortez wheezed. He checked the weight of his remaining mags. Not much, maybe one, maybe some scraps in half-empty bodies. Around them, the platoon converged on the knoll. What was left of it? They formed a ragged circle, guns facing outward. The medic moved among them, dragging tourniquets tight, slapping morphine, whispering reassurance he didn't necessarily believe. Phillips stayed near the center with the RTO, headset clamped to his ear, trying to keep Redleg on the line and coordinate with company. They were surrounded, low on ammunition, and sitting on a bump of dirt in a valley the enemy knew like home. Then, over the fading rumble of artillery and the constant ache of small arms, came a new sound, a distant, rhythmic chop. Helicopters. 2 Hueys crept in under the cloud deck, rotors thumping, door guns already swiveling. They weren't gunships, just slicks diverted from another mission, but they had miniguns and M60s in the doors and pilots crazy enough to fly into a hornet's nest. "Blackjack 2-6, this is Ghost Rider 1-1, the radio crackled. "We're low on fuel and ammo, but we'll give you a couple passes." Phillips popped smoke. Colored vapor hugged the knoll. "We're surrounded," he warned. "Enemy in the trees at close range. You'll be danger close." "Story of our day," the pilot replied. The Hueys roared over the treetops, minigun and door guns screaming. Tracers stitched the tree line, chewing through the positions that had been hammering the knoll all afternoon. NVA fire shifted upward, trying to swat the birds out of the sky. An RPG streaked past one helicopter's tail. A door gunner pitched backward as a round found him. Still, they made a second pass. The pressure on the ground eased. Incoming fire dropped just enough for the men on the knoll to breathe, to shove spare mags into shaking hands, to adjust wounded into better cover. Cortez checked his pouches again. 1 full mag. a couple that felt like they might have a few rounds. That was it. "We're Winchester and Bingo Fuel," Ghost Rider reported after the second run. "We gotta go. Good luck down there." Then they were gone, rotor thumps fading into the mist, taking their brief shield with them. A thin quiet settled. Not peace, just the stretched rubber band silence before it snaps. "They're gonna rush," Hennessy muttered. "They know we're low." He was right. Short whistles and shouted commands rippled through the jungle. Movement gathered in the trees, different this time, closer grouping, more bodies, less emphasis on careful fire, more on momentum. "Hold until you see 'em," Phillips called. "Make every round count." Cortez wiped his palm on his trousers, feeling grit under his skin. His last full magazine went into the rifle. The remaining partials stayed on his belt, insurance he knew might only buy him seconds. The NVA came in waves. Figures burst from the tree line, running low, firing from the hip, others dropping to a knee and shooting measured bursts. Grenades arced toward the knoll, detonating with sharp cracks that showered them with dirt and splinters. The perimeter erupted. Rifles answered with controlled, furious fire. The M60 sang again as the gunner broke out his last belt, laying traces like a burning fence. In his sector, Cortez saw 3 men advancing through the remains of the notch he'd been defending all afternoon. They moved like they'd drilled it. 1 firing, 2 rushing, then swapping roles. He cut the lead man down with a 3-round burst, stitched the second in the chest, then tried to catch the third as he dove for cover behind a rock. His rifle ran dry in the middle of that exchange. His hands didn't hesitate. He ejected the mag, grabbed the next reversed one without looking, slammed it in, hit the bolt catch and fired again, catching the third man as he popped up to shoot. The rounds that might have torn into the knoll's thin cover instead chewed bark above Cortez's head. Down the line, another soldier shouted, "I'm out!" Panic in his voice. "Use grenades!" someone yelled back. "Make 'em bleed for every step!" Hennessy's rifle clicked dry. He looked down at empty pouches. "That's it!" he shouted. "I'm black! Here!" Cortez grabbed his own last full mag and flung it along the inner arc, guided by the sergeant's voice. Hennessy snatched it out of the air, slammed it home, and went back to work. The gap that would have opened in the line stayed closed. Inside the perimeter, Doc Landry fired a pistol with one hand while pressing a bandage with the other. The wounded moaned or lay silent. Phillips, spattered with dirt, kept moving along the circle, shouting encouragement, shifting men to cover weak spots, firing when he had a clear shot. The NVA rush faltered, then surged again, then faltered for good. Too many bodies lay between the trees. The few who made it close were met with point-blank fire, and once rounds ran truly dry, with bayonets and rifle butts. And then, just like that, the forward pressure was gone. There was still harassment fire, the occasional crack from a hidden shooter, but the sense of a wave breaking over them receded. On the knoll, guns went silent one by one, not in triumph, but in emptiness. Triggers clicked on empty chambers. Fingers patted pouches and came up with nothing. "We held," someone whispered. "For now," Hennessy answered. Night crept in. Company finally punched through on the radio with a clear signal. Phillips reported their casualties, their ammo state, their need for medevac and resupply. The answer came back. They'd done enough. Hire was going to move heaven and earth, or at least some helicopters, to get them out. In the dark hours, low-flying slicks dropped duffel bags of ammo and medical supplies by feel and flares. Medevac birds came at first light, hovering just long enough for stretchers to be shoved aboard. Snipers harassed them from the tree line, but the valley seemed to have decided that erasing this stubborn knot of Americans would cost more than it was worth. By midday, what remained of 2nd Platoon was limping toward a new LZ, exhausted, filthy, carrying not just packs and weapons, but the weight of those who weren't making the walk. In the weeks that followed, the fight near that nameless hamlet became a line on an operations summary and a short paragraph in a battalion after-action report. Some staff officer marked it as a successful defense under ambush. Others shook their heads at the risk of pushing that deep into the Shau with so little support. For the men who'd been there, it was simpler and harder. A few hours where every magazine, every second, every fumble or smooth motion had mattered. Specialist Danny Cortez didn't stay in the field much longer. The shaking in his hands and the blank nights where sleep wouldn't come sent him to a rear area hospital, and from there, eventually, home. Texas heat felt thin compared to the valley's wet furnace. He took a job in a machine shop, married once, divorced once, lived quietly. He kept some of his old gear in a box in the garage: helmet, faded fatigues, a web harness with empty pouches. Sometimes, on evenings when the news showed another war somewhere else, he'd find himself at the workbench with a pile of scratched aluminum magazines, reversing them in old pouches, running the motion with an unloaded training rifle he'd cobbled together from scrap. Drop, draw, slam, tap, tug. The rhythm soothed something inside him. Decades later, a local historian filming a documentary sat him down in his living room. The Bronze Star, his battalion, had eventually pushed through, sat in a case on the coffee table. "Tell me about the magazines," the interviewer asked. "I keep hearing about this backwards reload." Cortez smiled faintly. "Started at Fort Polk," he said. "Didn't like the feel of flipping them around, so I turned them in the pouches instead. Practiced until it was just there. I got laughed at a lot." "And in the valley?" the historian asked. "In the valley," Cortez answered slowly. "I watched good men drop mags, jam them, try to shove them in backwards because their hands were shaking and the world was ending. I watched what a second costs when somebody's running at you with a rifle. I didn't drop mine, that's all." The story made its way into the finished documentary. Younger shooters watched it on glowing screens, arguing online about doctrine and gear. Some dismissed his method as outdated or unsafe. Others saw past the specific technique to what really mattered: the seriousness of a man who had practiced something small until it was perfect, even when everyone around him thought it was pointless. Years after that, a larger series about the Vietnam War used his platoon's fight near the nameless hamlet as one episode. The narrator's voice, calm and distant, laid out the context: the valley, the ambush, the knoll, the helicopters. It ended not with strategy, but with hands. War, the script suggested, often turned not on big decisions made in air-conditioned rooms, but on tiny habits formed in dark hooches, on quiet nights when nobody was watching. A mag pulled the same way for the 1,000th time. A soldier too stubborn to let go of something he knew worked for him. If you want to hear more stories like Cortez's about the small decisions that made a difference in impossible places, consider subscribing and staying with this series. Share this episode with someone who'd appreciate what those seconds cost. And let us know in the comments what details, what habits you think might matter when everything else falls apart.